Good evening. My name is Charles Francois, and I'm going to be presenting to you a persuasive speech about the FCAT. Now, as we get started, I want you to do me a favor and close your eyes with me, if you will. Now, I want you to imagine that you're about to undergo a routine surgery in which this procedure requires that you be sedated. Now, it is understood that before a procedure, a patient is prepped by being administered drugs necessary for sedation, and the patient then wakes up well after the surgery and has little to no recollection of the event which just occurred. But unfortunately for you, this time, things are different. You're not prepped. That's right. You're giving no anesthetic drugs whatsoever. And you're wheeled into the operating room wide awake. Now picture the excruciating pain as you feel each and every incision that the surgeon makes upon your body. Sounds painful, right? That probably would have gone a whole lot smoother and way better if you're prepared, right? Now sadly, this is the case for public school system being strong-armed by the FCAT. With the majority of the curriculum being dedicated to the FCAT, our children are being left painfully ill-prepared for the more developed academic world that awaits them after high school. Now, I'm a product of the Florida public school system, and I have undergone FCAT testing. And actually, I can remember when they first started implementing FCAT, the requirement that you had to pass the FCAT in order for you to graduate. Now, many of us in here have gone to high school right here in Florida and had to have passed the FCAT in order to obtain our high school diplomas and be right here in this college classroom where we are right now. Now, we can attest firsthand that our teachers spent most of their time preparing for us for this test and had nothing to do with preparing us, for life as college students. Now let's take a look at some of the problems surrounding the FCAT. Now the FCAT is an ineffective tool used to rank public schools. Back in about 1998, the Florida Department of Education decided to come up with the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, basically as a tool to measure the aptitude across the board to make sure that public schools and teachers and all the students were being taught in the same standard according to the Sunshine State standards. Now, with this one test, they allow the schools, depending on how well the students do, they get ranked and they get scored, and they're given a letter grade, A, B, C, D, and F. And now, the problem with these letter grades is that they represent the overall quality of the school, meaning the better schools will be an A school, and the not so good schools will be, of course, the F schools. And the problem with that I see is that this makes the high achieving students shy away from the schools that are deemed F or bad, and it does the same thing with the teachers. And now the schools that are A schools, B schools, get more funding than the schools that are D's and F's. And this, of course, hinders the ability to learn, and it makes teachers not as willing to go and teach over it. And I do believe that the grade system sets up the school for failure. In addition to the reasons given above, the schools that need help don't get the help that's necessary to get their low grades up because they don't have the funding, because the funding gets given to the higher graded schools. And the FCAT also creates added pressure on the teachers, which forces them to be more FCAT driven and only teaching to the test, so to speak. And another point I want to make, the FCAT leaves students outright unprepared for college. Now, the skills taught by FCAT are not put to use anywhere else after the test, and the students find themselves in remedial classes a lot of the times after have worked in all their grade school life preparing for such a test, and then when they get to college and everything is totally different, and they find themselves in remedial classes and often get bored and frustrated with the remedial classes before actually getting to a college credit classes in which they get the credit for. They get bored, frustrated, and they eventually drop out of college. And according to NBC 6 News in Miami, nearly half, that's right, half of high school students statewide failed the reading portion of the FCAT in 2012. And even Rick Roach, who was a 63-year-old educator with 2 master's degrees, took the FCAT, which was administered to his 10th graders, and made his results public. Now, Mr. Roach scored a 62% on the reading section of the math and scored a 17% on the math portion. Now, the Florida Department of Education needs to come up with a better way to measure the aptitude of the students. A test that is geared more towards preparing students for higher education would help significantly and would turn around and increase the number of students that will successfully obtain a college degree. Now, some might argue that college is not for everybody, and having a test geared towards college readiness will give the impression that one has to go to college in order to be successful. Now, it is true that college is not for everyone. However, finding out that college is not for one when one is already in college is not a desirable feeling at all. So the purpose of each preceding grade level should be to prepare one for the next, coming after. And going to college after being prepared for it is a choice. And it's imperative that those who choose to do so are adequately prepared for it. Now, I also want to show you a clip, the NBC News clip I was telling you about, and take a look at it, and I think you'll be pretty amazed by what you see.
Miami Central High's turnaround from an F to a C school got President Obama's attention last March, but this year, 10th graders at Central got among the lowest FCAT reading scores in the county. 16% scored satisfactory and above. Sophomores at Booker T. Washington only did 1% better.
So this is a reflection both of an ongoing challenge, but also made much worse by a new exam that's much more rigorous, with new standards, without the appropriate time for a transition for teachers, students, and parents alike.
Central's score is actually slightly better than last year. 10th graders at Miami Edison went from 7% to 19% this year. 2 magnet schools in Dade, Dash and Mast, had reading scores in the 80s and 90s. In Broward, Pompano Beach High is among the high-scoring schools in Broward, over 80% passing. Coconut Creek High has some of the lowest scores. Only 24% of freshmen did well in reading. Taking a look at FCAT reading county-wide, in Broward, 51% of 9th graders passed. 49% of 10th graders passed. In Miami-Dade, 48% of 9th graders did well. 46 of 10th graders passed.
We are somewhat relieved with the reading results. They still demonstrate a great deal of work to be done.
Another 6.
Now, with that being said, it is undeniably clear that the FCAT needs to cease to exist. And the FCAT is an ineffective tool used in ranking public schools. It sets the public schools up for failure, and it leaves the students ill-prepared for what comes after. Now, going back to the gruesome picture I painted for you earlier in the beginning of the speech, I cannot stress enough how important it is to be prepared for what comes next. As the great Malcolm X once said, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. So the choice is yours. Do you want our children to be prepared, or suffer the painful consequences of not being such? Thank you.